from humble beginnings.
Speaking for the time and live stations in Denver, KLZ Radio and KLZ Television.
To witnessing an historic flight.
Boy, just about 15 minutes, and the whole time people were screaming and having a good time on the flight.
And all the moments in between.
And you saved my life.
This one for John.
Yes. The Colorado Rockies are going to the World Series.
So it's going to be kind of cold today, temps in the 30s.
It's time to take a trip down memory lane. Welcome to 70 years of Denver7.
I'm Brian Sanders.
And I'm Nicole Brady. Usually you see us here in the studio, but for the next hour, we're going to take you all around our building, looking back at the history of Denver7 and how Colorado grew with us.
Let's start outside of 123 Spear Boulevard, which was not always our address. The first building was at 131 Spear, which no longer exists. It's a parking lot.
When Denver7 first signed onto the air on November 1st, 1953, there were no instructions, no precedent for how to do broadcast news. Every day was a first.
It was just 2 years after we hit the air that one of the biggest stories in Colorado would make its mark not only on the state, but on aviation. And Denver7's digital executive producer, Jeff Anastasio, shows us how Denver7 forever changed the way media covers court cases in Colorado.
Here's the story of
November 1st, 1955. The headlines flashed across the screens. That cold night, a son blew up his mother's flight, murdering her and dozens of others as the fiery wreckage rained down over Longmont.
This is a picture of all 44 who were killed.
It was the deadliest act of mass murder in Colorado's history.
The ball of fire was coming through the sky and the motors were wild, revved up.
And just covering what happened wouldn't be enough, as this early 1960s footage from our video vault explains.
Sometimes this routine coverage will lead us beyond the story itself. This is the first court trial ever televised in the state of Colorado. The dark-haired boy with the crew cut is John Gilbert Graham. You remember him. Planted a time bomb in the suitcase carried by his mother on a United airliner.
United Flight 629 had just taken off from Stapleton Airport. A few minutes later, controllers reported seeing a bright flash in the northern sky. Graham, who was angry at his mother, loaded 25 sticks of dynamite into her suitcase. The DC-6 blew up nearly 6,000 feet above Longmont, a scene of death and horror across 6 square miles of Colorado.
There will be an investigation.
It was right here.
Through the years, we've introduced you to the lives changed, the victims, the Longmont neighbors who were first to respond.
Close to that is where the tail was. About from there to where the motors went into the ground is where all the bodies were.
And families who lost everything.
My dad's cufflinks. I just felt I had a bit of my dad with me.
Months after the attack, in 1956, Denver7 was instrumental in bringing justice to the public eye.
KLZ had requested permission to broadcast and televise the trial. Permission was denied. We hit the air with a series of sharp editorials, got the Colorado Supreme Court to consider our case, and won a revision of Canon 35 of the Judicial Code of Ethics. And Colorado was one of the first states to permit television, radio, and photography in the courtrooms.
And 7 decades later, Denver7 still fights for access to the courtroom and high-profile cases because you have a right to know.
One of the first things we showed you on TV was open heart surgery, and you didn't just hear it or read it, you could see a life being saved.
Even back then, we were winning awards for our audio and visual coverage, our medical and science reporting, and to this day in our current lobby, we still have this display with our more prominent accolades next to an old TV camera.
At one point, we had more awards in every category than any broadcast facility in the country. But this job is about more than awards and keeping you informed. We have also connected with our community.
Like Mount Carmel Veterans Services in Colorado Springs, the organization provides mental health support, family services, and employment help for veterans throughout Colorado. And we surprised them with a big donation from Denver7 viewers.
Basically got me into the fold, and they sent me a lot of emails about opportunities such as building resumes. I'm employed and I'm working currently.
The most important thing to me is that nobody falls through the crack.
On behalf of Denver7 Gives, I would like to present this check to Mount Carmel Veterans Services for $7,000.
Thank you, Micah. We're honored to receive this check. It'll go to a good cause to help our military veterans and their families.
Coming up on 70 years of Denver 7, buckle up. We are cruising through Colorado's highway history. Welcome back to 70 years of Denver 7. And whether you're a Colorado native or you just moved here, we all know how terrible traffic can be.
Our highways have grown significantly in the 7 decades we've been on the air. Denver 7 traffic expert Jason Luber is taking us on a road trip from the Mousetrap to Floyd Hill.
This here is the intersection of Denver's 2 major interstates, I-25, which is right over there, and I-70 up there. You might have heard this called the Mousetrap on a radio traffic report. There is still debate about who came up with the name. Former Denver 7 consumer and entertainment reporter Bill Clark claims that he did, but most of us credit Denver's first airborne traffic reporter, the late Don Martin, who said the intertwining ramps could trap a mouse. Either way, this connection and these 2 interstates are vital to not just the city of Denver, but to all of Colorado, as nearly 500,000 vehicles drive through here every day. This interchange went through its last major reconfiguration during the 1990s, and what prompted the new design was back in August of 1984, this U.S. Navy truck hauling 6 torpedoes overturned, causing panic and grid-locked traffic throughout the day. The final bridge here was dedicated in 2003. Right in the middle of one of the largest, most extensive public works project in Colorado history, T-Rex. I'm standing on the Union Bridge right over top of I-25 on the north side of the Denver Tech Center, and one of the most important and dramatic changes to I-25 happened along here.
T-Rex was the nickname for the Transportation Expansion Project, and it wasn't just about widening and modernizing I-25 and that section of I-225 up to Parker Road. It was also about expanding the light rail system between downtown Denver and the Denver Tech Center. See, the volume of traffic here was predicted to exceed its maximum capacity, and it was feared the freeway would be near gridlock most of the day. And I can tell you, watching it from the traffic helicopter, there were days that I reported on solid stop-and-go traffic. But some of my strongest memories were the times I-25 would flood under Logan Street. It happened so often we used to call it Lake Logan. One particularly bad flood happened right during T-Rex construction, trapping drivers who had to be rescued. Thanks to improved drainage, flooding really doesn't happen here anymore. T-Rex took 5 years to complete, finally finished back in 2006, and now, 17 years later,
I-25 near Bellevue here carries nearly 280,000 vehicles each and every day. It's still slow going, but better than it was. Heading from here south down I-25, we go down to Douglas County to another major change of I-25.
I'm now driving south of Castle Rock in an area nicknamed The Gap because until last year, it was still just 2 lanes between here and Monument and remained relatively unchanged since it was originally built at about the same time Denver 7 signed on the air in the 1950s.
I'm now standing in one of the most unique parts of this project, one of several tunnels built under I-25. You won't see any cars or bikes or people walking through here. This tunnel is used exclusively
for the wildlife that lives and migrates through this area. This tunnel is helping to eliminate the numerous collisions that were all too common between vehicles and elk, deer, and even bear. However, with wider, more comfortable lanes, drivers have felt more aggressive, going faster than ever, with speeds now averaging well over 80 miles an hour.
We now go from the Gap up to the Cover on the north side of downtown Denver. As you can see, this is a park. But not just any park, because it's also the top, or cover as they call it, to a 1,000-foot long tunnel that allows I-70 traffic to flow underneath all the kids who usually play here every single day.
The more than $1 billion Central 70 project, finished just last year, is a great example of how previous highway design can be transformed from splitting a neighborhood to bringing the community back together again. The original design was an elevated bridge-type highway that cut right through the neighborhoods. It wasn't until the bridge was in such disrepair, with concrete falling off and rebar showing, that instead of replacing it, the idea was to lower the interstate and connect the roads at ground level to allow the community to come together again.
This is not the only tunnel along I-70. There's a much longer one about 60 miles that way at an elevation of 11,000 feet. I'm now here west of Denver at one of 2 major accomplishments of I-70 in the Colorado Mountains. We call these the EJMT, the Eisenhower Johnson Memorial Tunnels.
It's not an understatement to say that these tunnels cut under the Continental Divide are the primary link to the east and west sides of Colorado, allowing nearly 40,000 vehicles, including thousands of delivery trucks, to easily roll through here every single day. And get this, Since these tunnels have been opened, there have been more than 435 million vehicles that have used them. The other I-70 mountain engineering marvel is west of here through Glenwood Canyon. It's not hyperbole to say that the project during the 1980s was a marvel because of the way the interstate is stacked, double-decker style in places, and how the project team took care to incorporate the interstate into the fragile canyon environment. The canyon has seen its fair share of issues with rock falls and more recently flooding and severe mudslides in the summer of 2021. That closed the interstate for a couple of weeks. CDOT conducted extensive work over the last several years to prevent future rockfall and debris flow.
Speaking of flow, just down the hill from here is a place where traffic doesn't flow well at all. It's a place for one of CDOT's next big improvements. I'm now standing at the top of Floyd Hill, a little bit east of Idaho Springs and a little bit west of Evergreen. The place was named for Merrill Floyd, who had a ranch up here and also owned the Clear Creek Wagon Road Company, who built the original road up in this area.
Anyone who has tried to go skiing in the winter knows this hill all too well. Sitting here for what feels like hours. This $700 million project will reshape the look of this 8-mile section of I-70 that connects the mountains to Metro Denver. This area was in desperate need of an upgrade, not to mention the hill on the south side of I-70 was slowly sliding down. The additional lane here will be a tolled express lane, like what we've seen constructed on most other metro area highways. And one interesting part of the changes here will be an elevated highway deck similar to I-70 in Glenwood Canyon.
CDOT says this project should take about 5 years to complete, and when done, should immediately alleviate the nearly stop-and-go traffic that we see here just about every single weekend. Speaking of stop-and-go, another busy area is in northern Colorado, up in the northern Front Range, where growth is exploding. This is just a very small section of a seemingly never-ending project along the northern Front Range, I-25 through Longmont, Berthoud, Loveland, and Fort Collins. This project has been massive, constructed in several phases that started 5 years ago.
Originally, construction was set to wrap up last year, but more and more parts were added as funding became available. That allowed CDOT to not only rebuild the roadway, but they replaced bridges with entirely new structures and installed new designs like the diverging diamond here outside of Johnstown, where you drive on the left, not the right, for a short time. There is also, new to Colorado, mobility hubs that allow for CDOT's bus stand commuter buses to stop in the middle of the interstate where passengers get on and off, allowing for quicker trips between northern Colorado communities and Denver.
While there's an end to this project scheduled for sometime in 2024, another major project has been needed for years and years, and it's still on the horizon. As we look to the future of metro area improvements, we need to not look any farther than right here. I'm standing in the next major corridor to be reworked. This is I-270.
It's a short segment of interstate that connects our two major interstates, I-70 and I-25, through Commerce City. This interstate is always busy, even during the pandemic. This was the first segment of roadway to get back to nearly normal levels of traffic. CDOT is looking to the future of 270 by adding an express lane, replacing nearly a dozen bridges, and reworking the main interchange at Vasquez.
People ask me all the time, what's the future of transportation over the next 25 or 50 years? Self-driving cars? Flying cars? The way people drive now, I'm not so sure I'd want to fly next to them. I'm sure, though, there will be more emphasis on bike lanes and emphasis on alternative transit. But really only time will tell. What I do know is that we here at Denver7 will be here to cover it all for you. Jason Luber, Denver7.
The way we get around the state has changed over the years. Check out these photos of our news trucks from our archives, starting with the KLZ van outside the state capitol in the 60s. You can see the upgrades over the years from the 70s all the way up to 2021.
From cars to canines, we're celebrating our 70th anniversary by giving back to the community. Denver7's Jacqueline Allen and Russell Haythorne brought pet supplies to Foothills Animal Shelter and had an extra surprise.
On behalf of Denver7 Gives and our incredibly generous viewers, we'd like to present Foothills Animal Shelter
with $7,000. Well, $7,000 provides vaccinations for all the dogs and cats that enter our shelter for 6 weeks. So we'll be able to keep our population healthy and ready to go to their new homes with this gift.
That's amazing. So you already have a use for it.
We do.
Yeah.
Yes.
Next on 70 Years of Denver7, from the Broncos Super Bowl win to the Avs championship parade, we're taking a look back at Denver sports highlights. Welcome back to 70 years of Denver 7. Sports has always been an essential part of our coverage. This is actually the area of our newsroom where our sports team gathers to work on stories every day.
They got together to reflect on the biggest moments in Denver sports history over the years, starting with the first major pro sports team in town, the Broncos.
About 70 years ago, professional sports rolled into this dusty old cow town. The town has never been the same, and Denver 7 has been along for the ride the entire time. So, to discuss 70 years of sports history, we brought in our entire Denver 7 sports crew, Lionel Bienvenu, Troy Rank, and our intrepid executive producer, Jeff Howe. Guys, let's start with the Broncos in 1960. They were really the catalyst to bringing real big-time pro sports to this town, and things have really never been the same since.
Because of the fact that not only did we win the football game, but we really played like we're capable of playing.
Yeah, when I got here in 2001, they had just won back-to-back Super Bowls, and John Elway had just retired. It was the glory years of Broncos football.
This one for John.
And at Denver 7 here, I walked in the door. We started doing Monday Night Live with Ed McCaffrey. The new stadium was just being christened. Jeff and I were in the Denver 7 newsroom the day that Peyton Manning decided to come to Denver.
Actually talking about to go get a quick coffee before we put
Yeah.
the sportscast together.
We're sitting there typing, just working on the show. All of a sudden, we get an alert. Manning to Denver. We both jumped out of our chairs and we're like, what? Peyton Manning's coming. The whole newsroom at Denver 7 goes crazy. Yeah. We're on the air for like 6 straight hours.
I was at spring training with the Rockies, and Todd Helton was best friends with Peyton Manning at the time, and I was getting so many texts trying to figure out from our Broncos side who was he going to sign with.
His SUV, the SUV is now driving to Dove Valley. There he is. And, 2 Super Bowl appearances and 1 Super Bowl championship later, those are 4 of the best years in Broncos history as well.
I still go back and look at my video and I miss it.
Yeah, you missed that one.
Every time they got the ball, it was like a touchdown. It was great, just great being able to follow and shoot all that. It was just amazing.
That 2011 season with Tebow was one of the most unbelievable things I've ever seen.
I've told people about that because I wasn't covering it yet. He was much easier to appreciate than explain, because he was terrible for 3.5 quarters. I mean, the joke was his favorite receiver was the ground.
When I first started, when CU Buffs were still good, 2001 they won the Big 12 championship on our air. We're live in the post game, and the whole team came out to our live shot.
That's the way they get it done.
I remember very vividly the Rocktober sensation back in 2007 with the Rockies. It turned this city into something I had never seen it before. I went to one of the NLCS games, still one of the greatest memories I've ever had with my dad. And too low.
Yes,
the Colorado Rockies are going to the World Series.
And we were broadcasting live on Denver 7 from a rooftop across from Coors Field when they won that play-in game. Yes. And I remember saying, the Rockies have just won, and the camera panned off to the streets in Lodo. Just unbelievable. They were pouring out of the stadium. People were everywhere.
Oh, I was on the field and in the locker room, carrying the trophies around, the champagne, all that stuff. Champagne takes a long time to get off your gear, by the way.
Yeah, and it stings in your eyes.
Denver 7 was the home of the Stanley Cup champion Avalanche and the home of the NBA Finals champion Denver Nuggets for the first time ever.
He came into this world as the son of a coach, but in these playoffs, he became the Lakers' daddy.
What a blessing for us to be able to see history firsthand and be able to bring other people in through our reporting.
You want to share with everyone, and they don't ever get a chance to see. I mean, one of the best moments, you gave your mic to Landeskog.
Where's the camera?
Right there.
Okay, let me tell you this one thing.
I mean, where did it go from there? That was just such a great moment.
I didn't give it to him, he took it from me.
I try to explain some of the moments, but you really just gotta live them, and I try to share them the best way I can with my lens. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
That's the coolest part about it. You do really have to experience some of this stuff, but Jeff and all of us, really, we spend a lot of time bringing that to you guys and hoping you can feel that as well.
We got Coach Prime, we've got Sean Payton, we've got the Avs and Nuggets, we've got the Rapids, we've got the Mammoth, we've got it all here in Denver. So I don't know what the teams are going to do, but it's a blessing for us and Denver 7 to be able to go out every day and cover all these teams, not knowing what they're going to do, but just to be there for all this history that's been made. I think that's the most important thing.
We all know how important the holidays are, and we wanted to make buying the big meal easier for families across the Denver metro. So Nicole, Lisa, Jason, and I went shopping at Safeway for turkey and all the Thanksgiving sides.
So we're totaling up our purchase, $2,119.80.
We packed up all the food and brought it to Servicios de la Raza.
Help has arrived.
Plus, we're given a check for $5,000, which is awesome.
On behalf of Denver7 Gives and all our generous viewers, we would love to present you with this check.
For $5,000. Woo! Yes!
This will benefit the community by feeding hundreds of individuals across the Denver metropolitan area.
Coming up on 70 years of Denver7, we are looking up to the skies. Our weather team will show us how forecasting has improved over the years.
And get ready to take off on the history of DIA. We look back at its journey to become the third largest airport in the world and the two former mayors who made it happen. Welcome back to 70 years of Denver7. Just as Denver7 has grown over the years, so has Denver International Airport. It was originally built for 50 million passengers. It's now expected to see 78 million come through this year.
It is already the third busiest airport in the world, but it is always a work in progress. For better or worse, the growing pains have often overshadowed the economic success of the airport. So we're taking a look back at how DIA began and how Denver7 has been there since the first flight.
This is a very proud moment.
Denver International Airport is the hub of the Mountain West, but it didn't start out that way.
A Newsweek reporter tried to drop a wet blanket on it this week. They called it Pena's Folly.
A lot of negative criticism. People thought I was nuts.
Federico Pena was Denver's mayor when the planning commenced to expand Denver's then Stapleton Airport over I-70 into the Rocky Mountain Arsenal. But that idea didn't fly.
We realized it wasn't feasible for lots of reasons. The Rocky Mountain Arsenal was very contaminated. Adams County was opposing the expansion, and that's when we came up with the idea to move the airport.
Thus began the long, painstaking process to move the airport far east to its current location.
My contribution as mayor was to have the vision and the, if I can say, the audacity to change our minds.
The city had to annex nearly 53 square miles of land from Adams County, create the corridor we now know as Pena Boulevard, and break ground on what's become a one-of-a-kind design.
No other airport in the world has what we have. We can expand to 12 runways, 5 concourses. So in Chicago, Atlanta, LA, Dallas, they don't have the flexibility to grow.
The airlines are all cooperating with
But the final build-out and burdens that came with it were soon passed on to Denver's new mayor, Wellington Webb.
My administration built 80% of the airport until it opened.
I sat down with Mayor Wellington Webb to talk about taking over the project in 1991.
Mayor Webb was smiling as he played the role of passenger today.
His first job would be to negotiate a lease with the biggest carrier, United.
After getting a lease signed with them, we had to do our first change order at the airport, $267 million, to put in a baggage system, the famous baggage system that United Airlines wanted.
The complex system necessary to move luggage over a mile to the gates would lead to delays opening DIA.
DIA, Ask the Mayor.
And those delays dominated media coverage.
A question for the mayor. Mr. Webb, I would like to know why you, as the mayor of Denver, would allow the city to mortgage its air transportation's credibility on an unproven baggage system.
Did you feel the media coverage of the airport was fair at the time? I'm sure there were a lot of questions about the timeline, about every detail and decision that went into it. What were your thoughts on that back then?
Oh, I think the media has a job to do. I don't sweat it.
When that first flight was finally ready to land on February 28, 1995, 16 months behind schedule and $2 billion over budget.
Good morning, it is, and congratulations to you. You're the first flight to land.
Mayors Pena and Webb were there, and so was Denver7.
All right, here we go.
You're on the first flight to land at DIA. What do you remember about that flight?
I don't even know how I was chosen. I think I must have been the loudest person in the room saying, "Pick me, let me go, let me go."
I don't know when I'll be back again.
We'd like to be the first to welcome you to Denver International Airport.
It sounds like they wanted to make it a party because they gave you a goodie bag, which you saved.
I did.
All of these years.
I know, isn't that funny that I saved it? But I knew it was a special event.
Boy, just about 15 minutes, and the whole time people were screaming and having a good time on the flight.
This is to certify that on February 28th, 1995, I didn't even fill in my name, right? Was a passenger on United Flight 1474 from Colorado Springs to Denver.
You got all kinds of good stuff in there. It's like a time capsule.
It is my own little time capsule.
DIA would meet new challenges in the new century. The March 2003 blizzard tore a hole in the airport's iconic white fabric tents and shut down Pena Boulevard and the airport for nearly 2 days. The Great Hall renovation that started in 2018 has seen those familiar delays and budget overruns. But Mayor Webb believes it's the best airport in the world.
Does it really surprise you that Denver is where it is and that the airport is where it is today, third busiest in the world?
No, it does not, because I anticipated the growth of the city as well as the growth of the state.
DIA now employs 37,000 people. It's expanding the number of gates, amenities, and security lanes, and contributes a $36 billion economic impact to Colorado.
Denver International Airport is a winner. 100 million people will be going through there by 2045. And what people used to say, little old Denver, right? 100 million people.
What do you say today to people who, in jest, say, why'd you move the airport halfway to Kansas?
I say, I hope you enjoy it. I hope you enjoy all the great flights.
We've been covering news from the skies for decades. You're looking at pictures of our helicopter starting in the late 70s. Here's a postcard advertising our Skycam in the 80s. And by the mid-80s, Denver7's helicopter was a Bell Jet Ranger. It was a much larger, upgraded chopper from the previous version. In the 90s, we brought this green helicopter out for parade celebrations and let people take a peek inside at our area. And one more makeover in the early 2000s, bright yellow and blue for Air Tracker 7, which is the name we still call it today. Back here on the ground, of course, you're used to seeing us here at the desk, but there's a whole different part of our studio you usually don't see. It's our green screen. The addition of this technology is pretty recent in our 70-year history.
Yeah, it is. It's one of many changes to how our meteorologists forecast and present the weather and why they don't wear green. Denver7's Mike Nelson and Lisa Hidalgo take us through the old technology, the equipment, and even the hairstyles.
Thanks so much for joining us here.
With our crazy shifts in this business, I don't often get to actually see Mike, so it was nice to catch up.
So how many years of experience between the two of us do we have?
Across the front range. And talk about all of the changes we've seen when it comes to forecasting.
67 years between the two of us.
Amazing.
My age, almost.
It's amazing.
Jimmy Carter was the President of the United States when I started my career.
In that time, we've always had satellites and radar, but the technology has gotten so much better.
It used to be that we'd issue a warning for all of Weld County, and the tornado is just a small fraction of that.
Now we can fine-tune a forecast, which is so important, especially during severe weather season.
But in the old days, you had to hand plot everything and do all the analysis and then the forecasting that way. And now computers do so much of the work.
Mike, in fact, helped to develop one of the first ever weather computers.
One of my jobs to go out and train was in the early 1980s. I took a computer and delivered it to a certain gentleman named Al Roker and trained him on his very first weather computer. And that same year brought the very first weather computer to Denver and installed it and trained a legendary Denver weatherman by the name of Stormy Rotman.
And digitize it directly into your computer.
It led to major changes behind the scenes and in front of the camera.
For me, since the beginning of my career in the weather world, we've been using a green screen.
Right.
For you, it's been a little different. How did that start off?
We had pull-up boards with magic markers and magnets to do the weather.
And while we don't need a Sharpie anymore to draw a cold front,
This is kind of our little weather cave.
Mike still likes to keep it a little old school.
This is the map wall. Most of this you don't have to do anymore, but back in the day, we had a big machine that would spit out maps that were about 3 times the size of each one of these, and you'd put all the maps up on the wall so you could do the analysis and forecasting. I'm still kind of hardwired to do it that way, so I still like to grab a map and actually hand analyze it to show where all little subtleties are as far as storm systems developing.
But as we all know, technology isn't always perfect. Our cameras at Denver7 are robotic and, well, at times do robot things.
Look at this beautiful shot this afternoon. You can, wow! Yeah, yeah! Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, it's gonna be kind of cold today. Temps in the 30s.
Another amazing advancement is not what we're using to forecast, but who is actually doing the forecasting.
When I got to Denver, I think we might have had maybe 2 women on all the stations that did weather. And now here at our station, 3 out of the 4 of us are female.
Go girls, right?
Right. And you see that on all the other stations.
Colorado can also boast being home to Lockheed Martin, where we've both had the opportunity to visit and see some of the newest satellites being built by some extremely smart people.
They said, "Hey, Mr. Nelson, can we take a selfie with you?" And I said, "Sure, why?" And they said, "Oh, you totally came to our grade schools when we were little kids." And I'm thinking, yes, and now they're rocket scientists.
Yeah, you just never know who might be in the crowd at one of our school visits.
People may or may not know this, but I did come and speak to her school when she was little.
My 5th grade class, Mr. Mike Nelson. And I remember thinking when I came to the studio, watching him do what he does, I thought, how does that man walk and talk at the same time? And then here I am getting to work with him.
And while our look has changed...
Look at this hair, though. That is a coif.
Yeah, it was quite the coif.
Our passion is still the same.
The mild conditions continue to hold.
When we talk to a school, I don't think there's going to be 200 kids that are going to become meteorologists out there. But I hope that we can inspire those 200 kids to become more literate in science and curious about science so that they will learn the facts about what's happening in our world and make the right decisions moving forward that we can fix the things that need fixing.
We want to make sure kids across the Denver Metro have a happy holiday season. So Denver7's Jessica Porter, Jason Grenauer, Micah Smith, Amy Wattis, and Jessica Crawford hit the toy aisle at Walmart to fulfill some wish lists.
I'm gonna grab this coloring book. Barbie is the thing right now, so I think this little girl's gonna love it.
This is great. It's like Christmas poker.
Oh, I kind of like Sky Helicopter. How cute. This is it. This is it.
I hope that every single one of the kids that we were able to shop for today has an incredible holiday with their family, and we're so glad to be a part of it.
Yes, happy holidays, everybody.
From there, we boxed the toys up at Denver7, and our team loaded them up and headed to a precious child in Broomfield. Denver7 anchor Shannon Ogden helped unload the toys and presented a check as part of this season of giving.
Our generous Denver7 Gives viewers have done it once again. And so we bought $1,000 worth of toys, Christmas toys to give to the children you all serve. And then the remainder, which if my math is right, should be about $6,000. $6,000 to a precious child.
Thank you so much. We're so proud to be serving the Denver Metro community, and we're so excited to be able to serve more children this holiday season because of this amazing donation. So thank you guys so much.
Coming up on 70 years of Denver7, we're remembering our barrier-breaking meteorologist Pam Dale, the touching tribute from her former co-workers and her 2 children. Welcome back to 70 years of Denver7, and we are looking back at one person who left a legacy here, our sunny meteorologist Pam Dale.
She died in 2004, but so many Coloradans still remember her. She was an inspiration to so many people, and above all, she was a mother to her children. Denver7's Russell Haythorne spoke with Pam's kids about her enduring impact years later.
The on-air personalities you invite into your home simply by turning on your TV can feel like family. Never was that more true than it was in the late 90s and early 2000s.
I'm just enjoying it. It's been beautiful weather.
With Pam Dale.
Started out a little cloudy. And I asked them if they remember the wheelchair meteorologist, and they always have fond memories of her, even if they didn't know her.
She was beloved by co-workers, friends, and those thousands of fans who gladly welcomed Pam into their living rooms every night.
76 in Boulder.
He worries.
I don't worry.
He worries. So I didn't want to tell him right away that I had a lump.
And then The skies became cloudy for Pam, as was reported at the time by Denver7's Bertha Lynn.
A lump that turned out to be breast cancer.
And then in 2004, after a long and courageous battle with breast cancer, practically the entire state of Colorado mourned the loss of Pam Dale.
You can see a lot of the clearing in the skies.
She was a dedicated meteorologist and inspiration to others, and most of all, a doting mom who loved her family. Her legacy now lives on in those little blonde Pam Dale lookalikes.
You did great!
Who are now all grown up and paying a visit to some old friends at Denver7.
Hey, how are you?
I'm great.
So good to see you.
Yeah, you guys were here a lot. My kids were here a lot.
Scotty and Logan Peitzman spent a lot of time in this building as their mom worked odd news hours.
That's pretty neat.
I remember Pam when I was a child.
Oh, wow.
That's crazy.
That's crazy.
Colleagues remember Pam as a bit of a speed demon in that wheelchair, often with Scotty and Logan in her lap as she prepared to do the weather at what was then called 7 News.
Leadfoot. I don't know how many times I almost got run over by you guys.
The wheelchair was part of who Pam was.
Was in a horseback riding accident very, very young. Was paralyzed from the waist down.
That injury at just 16 years old didn't deter Pam from chasing her dreams or change that caring and kind person she was.
I have found many more diaries when we were cleaning out Dad's house. And she's got a diary entry from the day of the accident. And instead of writing about how she's so sad that she's never gonna walk again and she's in so much pain, she literally was talking about how cute her nurses were and how they would pick her up and she would just swoon.
Of course, as they say, the rest is history. Pam would go on to become one of the most respected and admired on-air personalities to ever work in TV news.
Not only a paraplegic and a woman in TV in the early 90s, like how many amazing things can you do at one point?
We haven't met a single person who could find a single bad word to say about our mother.
Even in her final days, Scotty and Logan say their mom lived with grace, dignity, and compassion.
When it was getting pretty close to the end, I would go to her treatments with her. And we had one conversation when we got home where I was like, "You're gonna come back and visit me after you die?" And she said, "I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do that."
Precious moments these two will never forget.
He was the most beautiful person inside and out.
It's always really nice to hear, but it's hard to hear too, because it's like, man, if we could have had a little bit more time, that would be cool.
Scotty and Logan have now lost their dad too. Don Peitzman passed away in 2020.
I envision, my parents are just together now. They're happy, they're without pain, they're just free.
And what a legacy they have left.
Kind of a really incredible story of resilience and dedication and love. I mean, I think being a really good person can get you really, really far.
My memories are kind of slim and limited, but they were precious. Around here, everyone loves her. Around the neighborhood, everyone loved her. It was just, she just radiated love and happiness. I mean, you couldn't be near Pam Dale without being happy, it seemed,
For Denver7's 70th anniversary.
A 1 in a million woman.
I'm Russell Haythorne.
This year, Anne Trujillo signed off after 39 years on the air at Denver7. Her remarkable career was so often led by her compassion. With the help of our Jacqueline Allen, we reunited Anne with a woman whose life was forever changed by a story that aired on Denver7.
Anne, you saved my life. I can't begin to thank you enough.
This picture tweeted at me today asking to save a life.
2013, my kidneys started to fail. I had to go on dialysis, and I was on a list to get a transplant. Then my husband decided to put a sign on the back of our car. Anne Trujillo thought it was a great story, gave the story to you.
Social media gives these types of messages a much broader audience.
Lori saw the story. She decided, I'm gonna give that woman a kidney. And I'm here today, alive and happy and well, and got to meet 2 new grandchildren. I'm here today today because of you. Oh my God. Going on 9 years in August, and I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you and Aunt Trujillo.
Coming up on 70 years of Denver 7, the decades of stories we've told are stored right here in our basement. Coming up, we'll take a look back at the big changes to our studio and our newsroom.
Welcome back to 70 years of Denver 7. We are in our basement right now where we store all our old video. Of course, back in the day, we were on film, then we moved to tapes. Now we're on to digital files.
It's still cool to see some of the stories we've done over the years on these shelves, and Denver 7's Shannon Ogden and Jessica Porter took their own trip through the archives to look back at the history of our studio and our newsroom.
So let's start with these great old pictures of election coverage here at Denver 7. First of all, the setup is great, and I love that it's sponsored. Right there, there's not a commercial, it's just Westinghouse presents the election headquarters.
And just take a look, they have newspapers, they are smoking in the studio, which we would never get away with today.
No, they wouldn't, and Goldwater Johnson. Okay, so the board you saw behind them, they were manually, like the old baseball scoreboard, those are pieces of tape that are looped with numbers on them so they can update election results manually throughout the evening. So great.
That's fantastic. And just look how many people are in the studio. The cameras are humongous. And everything is done by hand. It's all done with paper.
And I don't want to spoil alert here, but Johnson beat Goldwater in that particular election right there.
And I think we have a shot here of Tony Kopolewski. This was from November, the last election, and he's doing it all with the big board digitally. Everything comes in from the Secretary of State's office instantly into our systems, and he's able to click and move and go through the data and update you guys.
Yeah, and those old-timey guys would think this is pure witchcraft if they could see it today. This is an old audio patch board. He's patching through different audio sources. We moved on to the equipment section and how much things have changed there. That is crazy. That's a report. I think his name was John Neal, and then he has a cameraman, and then the guy standing next to him is holding the tape recorder for that camera. So he had a completely separate device there. And this, we had to develop film. Oh, we didn't.
We didn't. But I still think I was the last generation to even work with tapes, and you would have to line them up in order, have them queued up so the director would call them up, and you'd have to be ready.
And this is the state-of-the-art KLZ, which was the call letters before KMGH, a mobile unit, and I love the antennas on top of that. And now we're getting a little further ahead in time. This is some festival that we were covering. You see satellite dishes have started to make an appearance there.
Just look how large the equipment was to go live. This is one of our trucks today. Also very large, but there's a lot more computers and things inside that just make our life more comfortable out on the field. And we don't even need these anymore. We actually go live with just a backpack and our camera and a couple of lights. We can be anywhere we need to be.
And so quickly.
And
so much lighter. These poor people have to lug this stuff around. So this was an old pneumatic tube. Remember at the banks, you'd stick your thing and it would go, and the bank teller would get it and send it back to you? That was a system inside this building, how they would get information from one side to the other.
That's how they would move paper around. Let's take a look at the newsroom and the diversity. There wasn't a lot of diversity back in the day. And
I count one female by my count.
So many things have changed. It's just incredible to see how our newsroom has flourished with different perspectives.
The industry too, as a whole. And then
this is a photo of me, Ann, and Stacy, and I can't imagine what the folks back in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s would have thought seeing 3 women on the desk. Sometimes we still get emails about this today.
Would they be more shocked with this or with Tony on his magic board? I don't know.
And this was Pride from a couple of years ago, and this is our whole newsroom participating, and I think we're really proud of the diversity, the inclusion, the different perspectives that we have to tell your story.
123 Spear Boulevard has been our home for most of the 70 years that we've been on the air. But at one point, there was heated debate over whether or not to make it an historical landmark.
Our parent company Scripps started exploring the possibility of selling the building back in 2019.
Then filed for certification with the city a year later, clearing the way for the building to be demolished. But 3 Denver residents fought to keep it intact. We asked people in April of 2021 if they thought this example of brutalist architecture deserved saving.
Really, the style comes out of the era. It's a bold building. It's tricky to build. Any imperfections would be visible.
I think that it is a unique building. It doesn't look like every other building, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's a special building either.
A month later, City Council decided the building could be bulldozed if necessary to sell. Then Councilmember Robin Kinich told us she thought the scrutiny for landmark status needs to be tougher.
Not every building should be able to meet every standard. And I just, my joke is that history happens everywhere, but that doesn't make every building historical.
And that brings us to our new home. We will be moving soon to 2323 Delgany Street, not far from Coors Field, which, as you can see behind us, is still a work in progress as crews work to turn it into our new broadcast home.
But even though our location is changing, our mission will stay the same, to keep you informed and to help our neighbors in need. That's 70 years of Denver 7. I'm Nicole Brady.
And I'm Brian Sanders. Thanks for watching.